A man you've never met hands you $60,000 in cash, then disappears. No threats, no instructions, just a note. Whatever happens next was always going to happen. You think it's a gift, it's not, it's a test. And by the time you realize the rules, your son is already missing. The sidewalk was slick with morning rain, and traffic murmured behind thick glass as Oliver Crane pushed open the doors to his modest accounting firm. It was a Thursday, just past 8, and already he felt behind. His tie, as usual, was slightly crooked, his coffee tepid, and his thoughts disorganized, flickering from unpaid invoices to his mother's deteriorating health to his teenage son's silence at the dinner table. The elevator was broken again. He trudged up the stairs to the fourth floor. No receptionist, no assistant, just a dusty lobby and the hum of a forgotten office. This was Oliver's life, clean, responsible, unremarkable. By 11, he was deep in a spreadsheet, eyes bleary, when the buzzer on the front door rasped unexpectedly. He wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, he crossed the room and peered through the glass. A man stood outside, soaked to the bone. Expensive-looking trench coat, silver hair matted to his head, and in his hand, a battered leather bag. He looked more like a retired symphony conductor than a street vagabond. Still, there was something unsettling about him. Oliver opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" The man smiled, revealing perfect white teeth. "Not really, just a strange morning." Oliver blinked. The man extended the leather bag. "Here for you." "What?" "Take it," the man said. "It's not a mistake, just don't open it here." Oliver's brow furrowed. "I'm not taking some." But the man had already turned and walked briskly down the stairs, disappearing into the misty street below. Oliver stood there for a full minute, the bag in his hand. It was heavier than expected, solid, real. He locked the door behind him, turned it in his hands, and debated whether this was some kind of prank, but curiosity won. He set the bag on his desk, heart thumping, and unbuckled the straps. Inside was money, bundles of it, tightly packed bricks of $100 bills neatly stacked like library books. Alongside them, a small folded note. "This is a test, invest it, lose it, burn it, whatever happens next was always going to happen. E." Oliver's legs nearly gave out. He rechecked the door, drew the blinds, and started counting. 6 bricks, 10 grand each, $60,000, untaxed, untraceable, no phone number, no name, just that cryptic signature. Who the hell was E? He didn't tell anyone, not even his wife. For the next 3 days, Oliver moved like a ghost. He went through the motions, drop-off at school, grocery runs, endless data entry, while the bag sat locked in the back of his closet under a pile of old coats. But his mind never left it. Every sleepless night he imagined scenarios, FBI stings, laundering schemes, hidden cameras. By Monday morning, he cracked. He didn't go to the office. Instead, he drove to a used car lot 30 minutes outside the city. A dusty red Chevy Malibu sat at the back, $3,200 cash. No questions asked. That afternoon, he picked up a used espresso machine, a small neon sign, and leased a dingy, forgotten corner spot in a declining strip mall. No paperwork yet, just cash, just an idea. By Friday, Crane's Beans had a logo, a rough menu, and 2 bored high schoolers willing to work minimum wage for a shot at free cappuccinos and Wi-Fi. It wasn't smart, it wasn't safe. It wasn't anything Oliver Crane had ever done in his life. But it felt right. That weekend, he told his wife. Lauren sat silently across from him in their tiny kitchen, wine glass trembling in her hand. What? You took money from a stranger on the street." He nodded. "You used it to start a coffee shop." Again, he nodded. She stared at him like he'd grown antlers. "Are you having a breakdown?" "Maybe," he admitted, "but I couldn't keep living the way I was." She leaned back, her eyes shining, not quite angry, not quite understanding. "What if it's dirty money, Oliver? What if someone comes looking for it?" "I've thought about that every day," he whispered. And he had, but there was something about the way that man looked at him. That quiet confidence, that strange serenity, like he knew this moment had been coming for years. And now something was coming. Because at 10:13 the next morning, just as Crane's Beans opened its doors to the first curious customers, a dark SUV pulled into the parking lot. And out stepped a man in a beige suit with one eye that didn't blink. The man with the glass eye didn't order coffee, didn't browse the pastry case or ask for directions. He stepped into Crane's Beans like he owned the oxygen inside, slow and deliberate, scanning the place with a predator's patience. Oliver saw him instantly. It was hard not to. He was tall, with the kind of smooth, nondescript features that made him hard to describe later, except for that one detail. The left eye gleamed unnaturally, pale and fixed. It made his otherwise calm demeanor somehow sinister. "Nice place," the man said almost kindly. Oliver wiped his palms on his apron, heart thudding in his ears. "Thanks, can I help you?" "You're the owners." "Why, yeah, I am's." The man nodded, he didn't smile. "I'm not here for coffee." Oliver swallowed. The man leaned against the counter. "Someone left you something recently." It wasn't a question. Oliver glanced around. Only two customers in the back, high schoolers with earbuds and no interest in adult affairs. "I don't know what you means." The man's good eye twitched, not irritation, amusement. "Let's not pretend you didn't report it, you didn't return it, but you used it, which means you passed the first test." A cold wave passed through Oliver. "Who are you?" "I work with E, that's all you need to know for now." He slid something across the counter, a small envelope. "Open it when you're alone, and Oliver," he turned halfway to the door, paused. "Don't let success make you soft, this is still a game, one move at a time." Then he was gone. Oliver stood there breathing shallowly until the front door stopped jingling and the SUV pulled away. He didn't open the envelope until midnight. Lauren asleep, the house quiet, he sat at the kitchen table with a beer and trembling hands. Inside was a slip of paper with an address and a time, 4 p.m. Sunday. No instructions, just coordinates. And on the back, one line in elegant script. "Build something or walk away, but you cannot stay in between." That Sunday, he drove across the city to the address, a crumbling warehouse in an industrial district, boarded windows and sagging gutters. No people, no signs. Just a keypad on a rusted door. The code was 6013, the amount of money he had left from the original bag. A guess, it worked. Inside was dim light, the buzz of fluorescent bulbs, and four others already seated around a folding table. They were nothing alike. A woman in her 60s with fierce eyes and paint on her hands. A man in his 20s in scrubs, barely keeping his foot from twitching. A girl, maybe 19, covered in tattoos and glaring daggers at everyone. And a clean-shaven, overdressed man with the look of someone who'd lost and made a fortune before lunch. No one spoke for a long time. Then the door opened and in walked Ease. It was him, the same man, soaked that rainy morning, but now dry, sharp, focused. He moved with the precision of someone who didn't need to ask for permission. "Welcome," he said simply. "You've all passed the first step." Oliver's head spun, all of them. E began to speak about systems, tests, and choices. About the way most people would use a sudden windfall to feed their addictions or self-destruct in comfort. But these five they had created. The woman had opened a community art studio in a part of town no one cared about. The young nurse funded a small mobile clinic. The tattooed girl started a food truck that fed anyone who couldn't pay. The businessman bought back his father's failing auto shop and rehired the men he'd once fired. "And Oliver, you started something ordinary," he said, "but you're building something meaningful. People are talking, you don't even know it yet." He let the silence hang. "There will be more tests, higher stakes, more money, but not everyone will make it." The room shifted. "This isn't about greed, it's about capacity. What can you carry, who can you lift?" Then he handed each of them another bag, smaller this time, lighter. "Spend this however you want, but next time I want to see impact, not just ideas." As they left one by one, Oliver found himself walking next to the tattooed girl. She had a face like a storm cloud. "You believe any of this?" she asked. "I don't know yet," he admitted. She grunted, "Hope you've got a strong stomach." He didn't answer, because already in the back of his mind he was calculating. Inventory, rent, staffing, expansion. What if they added a drive-through? What if they opened a second location? What if they created a space where people, especially the lost and quiet ones, felt seen? But before any of that, he needed to get home. Because someone had broken into their house. The front door was wide open. And his son was gone. The couch was overturned, a lamp shattered near the fireplace, and the back door swung limply on its hinges. But the worst part was the silence. No screaming, no struggle, no sign of where Ethan had gone. Oliver's mind ran too fast to settle. He called out his son's name once, then again louder, and again until his voice cracked, but the only reply was the hollow echo of his panic. Lauren came home 15 minutes later. Her scream hit the air like glass breaking. She dropped her keys, ran past Oliver and into the rooms, flipping every light, yanking open every closet as if Ethan might simply appear. But he didn't. By the time the police arrived, Oliver could barely string a sentence together. He told them everything or almost everything. Not about the leather bag, not about the man with the glass eye, not about the second envelope. Just the facts. Ethan, 16, had been home after school. He hadn't gone out, he hadn't called, then gone. The detective, a sharp-eyed woman named Salgado, stood in the middle of the wreckage with a practiced calm. This doesn't look random. Oliver's stomach turned. What do you mean? No forced entry in the back. Lock was picked, not broken. Whoever came in, they knew what they were doing, and they weren't looking for cash or TVs. Lauren squeezed his hand so hard it hurt. They took our son. Oliver nodded, but in the back of his mind something else whispered, no, they took mine. That night he sat on the floor of Ethan's room, the sneakers under the bed, the posters half peeled from the walls, the faint smell of cheap cologne and teenage silence, and he did something he hadn't done in years. He prayed. Not to God, not really, but to whoever was behind this, whoever was testing him, watching him, grading his worth by the choices he made. I'll give it all back, he whispered, every dollar, just bring him home. His phone buzzed at 3:17 a.m. No caller IDs. He answered with shaking hands, hello. The voice was distorted, filtered, untraceable. Oliver Cranes, you are playing a game with men who don't play fair. One move out of line and your boy disappears. Forever. Oliver's chest clenched. What do you want? Listen carefully. There was a long pause, then instructions, a time, a place, one demand. Come alone, bring the bags. At dawn, Oliver stood in the garage, staring at the second leather bag, the one from the warehouse. 20,000 in fresh bills. He hadn't spent a dollar yet. Lauren appeared behind him, pale, silent. I'm going with you, she said. He shook his head. I can't risk it. You think I care? If it were you missing, he'd go. They stood like that for a long moment. Then he relented. The meeting place was a condemned hotel by the harbor, half covered in graffiti, windows boarded, roof sagging like old bones. They parked down the street, waited, then approached the entrance. A single bulb flickered overhead. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, the lobby reeked of mold and forgotten years, and in the center stood the man with the glass eye, alone. Oliver froze. Where, Ethan's? Safe, he said, for now. He stepped aside and motioned toward the staircase. Upstairs, room 212, you have 5 minutes. Lauren darted forward, but Oliver held her back. Wait. To the man he said, why him, why my son? The man didn't blink, because you don't move unless someone bleeds. Then he turned and vanished into shadow. They sprinted up the stairs, hearts in their throats. Room 212 had no door, just splinters. Inside, Ethan sat in a chair, wrists zip-tied, blindfolded, mouth taped but alive. Lauren sobbed as she tore the tape from his face. Oliver cut the plastic ties. The boy was shaking, disoriented but unhurt. They didn't touch me, he whispered. Just kept asking questions about you, about money, about some guy named E. Oliver felt the world tilt, so it was about the money, about the test. They got Ethan home under police escort, filed a report and locked every door. But Oliver knew the game wasn't over. That night, another envelope appeared, slid under the back door like a threat. Inside, a single card. Lesson 2, every gift has a cost. How much are you willing to pay? And underneath it, in different handwriting. You were never the only player, but you might be the first to break the rules. Oliver lit the envelope on fire in the sink, but the questions burned hotter than the paper. Who else was playing? And who was playing him? Ethan slept in their room for the next 2 nights. Lauren barely let him out of her sight, but Oliver couldn't sleep at all. Every creak in the house sounded like a signal, every shadow stretched too long, and through it all the memory of that voice on the phone echoed, you are playing a game with men who don't play fair. By Tuesday, Oliver stopped going to the cafe. He handed the keys to Julia, one of the high school baristas, and told her to run the place for a week. Whatever's in the drawer at night, split it between you and Mason. No questions. She didn't ask. Instead, Oliver drove to the edge of the city and parked in front of a locked gate that led to a private airfield. A place he'd never been, but recognized from the envelope in his glove box. The guards didn't ask his name. They waved him through like he was expected. At the far end of the tarmac sat a jet, sleek, black, humming with idle power. A woman waited at the foot of the stairs. Business suit, gray hair and a twist, no expression. She held a tablet. Mr. Crane, this way, please. On board, everything was white leather and silence. 4 other people were already seated. Not strangers. The nurse, the tattooed girl, the artist, the rich man from the warehouse. And all of them looked different, hardened, sharper, as if the game had etched new lines into their faces. The nurse nodded at Oliver. You got the card too. He nodded back. They took my son. A quiet fell over the cabin like fog. Then the door sealed shut, the engines roared, and they were airborne. No one said where they were going. They landed in Nevada, in the middle of a desert valley surrounded by nothing but sand and wind. A fleet of black SUVs waited on the runway. Men with earpieces opened the doors, ushered them in. No one spoke. 30 minutes later, they arrived at a massive, unfinished glass complex, half corporate headquarters, half bunker. Inside, a marble lobby stretched to the ceiling, walls lined with silent screens. At the center stood, dressed in all black, hands behind his back. I assume you've figured it out by now, he said. This was never just about money. Oliver stepped forward. Then what is it about? E studied him. Leadership, vision, pressure. You were chosen because you hesitated, and then you acted, but not without cost. His voice echoed through the atrium. Some of you built businesses, some fed communities. One of you smuggled insulin across the border to dying children, and another bought back land stolen from his ancestors. He turned slowly, meeting each person's eyes. But now we find out who you are when you're cornered. A door behind him opened. Two guards stepped in, dragging a man between them. His face was beaten, his suit ripped. It was the man with the glass eye. Bloodied, broken. E didn't flinch. This man betrayed us, sold information to someone outside the circle, put one of your children in danger. Oliver's jaw clenched. He did this to Ethan. E stepped closer to the group. So now a final test. He motioned to the guards. Each of you will be given a sealed envelope. Inside is a name, not his, someone else, an innocent connected to the betrayal. You have a choice: do nothing and walk away, or act and prove loyalty. The artist's voice cracked. Act how? E turned toward her slowly. Destroy them, financially, publicly, whatever it takes. The tattooed girl scoffed. This is a cult. No, E said, this is influence. This is the world you say you want to change, but it changes you first. The envelopes were handed out, sealed in red wax. Oliver didn't open his right away. They gave them a room, one night to decide. He stared at it for hours, held it, turned it over, pressed it to his forehead like it might offer clarity. Lauren called twice. He didn't answer. He didn't know how. When he finally cracked the wax and unfolded the paper, the name written there nearly stopped his heart. Ethan Crane. His own son. A test, a warning, a mistake. Or the final move in a game with no rules. The paper slipped from his fingers. Across the hallway, he heard someone sobbing, then something break. By morning, 2 players were gone. One vanished into the desert. The other left a note, I'm not like you. The 3 remaining, including Oliver, were ushered into a narrow boardroom. He sat at the head. So, he said, who still wants to play? Oliver's answer was quiet but firm. I want to finish what I started, but not your way. E studied him, then smiled, the first genuine expression Oliver had ever seen on the man's face. That was the right answer. They flew back in silence. No explanations, no celebration, just the hum of altitude and pressure. Oliver sat alone, eyes shut, trying to unspool the tangle in his chest. He hadn't played by the rules and he was still here. But 2 others were not. Back home, Ethan was waiting at the airport, standing just behind Lauren, blinking hard under the harsh terminal lights. When he saw his father, he didn't run, didn't speak, just hugged him like he never wanted to let go. Oliver squeezed him so tightly, the boy winced. I'm sorry, Oliver whispered, so sorry. Ethan shook his head. I knew you'd come back, I just didn't know if you'd be the same. They drove home in a quiet car. The city outside seemed smaller somehow, the streets more fragile, as if the world had shifted while Oliver was gone. And it had. Over the next week, Oliver dismantled the game. He sold the second bag, all of it, and anonymously funded 3 new therapy clinics across the city. He hired 2 ex-cons at Crane's Beans, gave Julia a management title and a raise, and used what was left to pay off debt for 15 struggling cafe owners nearby. No press, no photos. He wasn't interested in becoming influential. He wanted to become real again. But the game wasn't finished with him. On Friday morning, a manila folder appeared at the shop, hand-delivered by a kid on a bike who didn't know who it was from. Inside, documents legal, financial, corporate, all leading back to something called the Halberd Trust, a private equity firm with billions in assets and almost no public record. And one key figure attached to it, Ezekiel Laurent. But this wasn't just about E's identity. The folder also included a list of properties. One of them was Cranes Beans. Oliver blinked. The lease agreement he'd signed was fake. He didn't rent that space, he'd been placed there, controlled from day one. And then a final sheet. A purchase offer for the cafe, 10 times its value. Immediate transfer, no contingencies. He stared at the bottom line. Enough money to start over, to move away, to disappear. Or enough to finally burn the machine down. That night, he called the only other person who might understand. The tattooed girl, her name was Shay. She answered on the second ring. Thought you might call. You still playing? Depends who's keeping score. They met in a 24-hour diner on the edge of the city. She looked the same. No more focused. She built something too. Her food truck now fed hundreds with donations rolling in from anonymous backers. Some, she suspected, still part of the game. She slid a USB stick across the table. What's this? Everything I've found, names, Shellcore, real estate trails. They think they're invisible, but they've gotten sloppy, or maybe they want us to know. Oliver frowned. Why would they? She sipped her coffee. Because they're not done testing, they're choosing, grooming. They don't want followers, Oliver, they want kings. He exhaled slowly. Then maybe we burn the board. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Or flip it. Back at home, Oliver laid it all out for Lauren, the folders, the names, the contracts. Everything he'd tried to hide. She didn't speak for a long time. Then quietly, do you regret it? He didn't answer. She looked at him like she was reading every page of him again for the first time. Because I don't, I was terrified, but for the first time in years you were alive. He swallowed. They used Ethan. They did, but you protected him. She reached out, took his hand. So what are you going to do? Oliver opened the drawer, pulled out the purchase contract. He stared at it a full minute. Then slowly he tore it in half. I'm going to finish this my way. The next morning he held a staff meeting. Cranes Beans is no longer mine, he said. It's ours. I'm signing over equal shares to everyone who's been here since day one. No tricks, no backroom deals, just trust. Julia cried. Mason hugged him. A few regulars cheered from the corner. It wasn't about coffee anymore. It was about choice. But while Oliver built something honest, someone else was watching. In a sleek office tower in another city, Ezekiel Laurent poured a glass of bourbon and stared at a wall of monitors, each showing one of the former players going about their days. Most were folding back into their old lives. A few had disappeared. But one had done something different. Laurent smiled. He pressed a button on his desk. A man entered, tall, clean-cut, no eye patch. Sir, prepare the final phase. For Oliver Cranes. No, Laurent said, swirling his glass. For everyone he touches. 2 weeks passed in quiet. Too quiet. Oliver felt it first in the small things, the glitchy bank transfers, the odd supplier cancellations. A sudden health inspection that seemed more like an interrogation than a routine check. By the time the fire marshal arrived with a clipboard and 2 armed escorts, he knew. It had begun. They weren't just applying pressure, they were isolating him. Shay called in a panic. Her truck was impounded, donations frozen. Someone leaked fake invoices to her tax agent. They're scrubbing us out, she said, breathless, systematically. Oliver gripped the edge of the cafe counter, watching the front door like it might burst open. They want us to fold. No, Shay said, they want us to beg. That night, Oliver made a list. Names, contacts, people he'd helped, people who had helped him. One by one, he reached out. And one by one, they answered. The barista's brother offered a back channel to a reporter. The artist from the warehouse connected him with a veteran activist group. Even Lauren, ever the quiet force, tracked down a legal aid nonprofit willing to look into property deeds. By morning, it was wars. And Oliver Crane had never felt more alive. The story broke on a Thursday, a 3-part expose in a mid-tier newspaper that spread like wildfire, the secret network funding America's next millionaires and what they're hiding. Photos, names, shell companies, even a blurry image of E, real name now public, Ezekiel Laurent, former hedge fund prodigy turned philanthropic architect. By noon, the phones wouldn't stop ringing. By sunset, the cafe parking lot was full of reporters, activists, lawyers, and strangers. Regular people, quiet people, some poor, some desperate. All of them saying the same thing. I heard what you did, can you help me? Oliver didn't sleep that night. He sat in the back room, Ethan beside him, now 17 and silent but steady. I didn't mean for any of this, Oliver said. I know, Ethan replied, but maybe that's why it worked. They didn't win the war, not completely. Lawrence still moved in the shadows, but the illusion cracked, and sometimes that's all it takes. By spring, Crane's Beans became more than a cafe. It became a symbol, a place where decisions were made with hands, not algorithms, where money came last, where people came first. And Oliver, tired, flawed, changed, finally understood. The bag had never been a gift. It was a mirror.